And music plays. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Raf. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to yet another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Over to my that way. Haha, I got it right this time. Is James. Hey, buddy.
It's hard to figure out which side is which when you try to think about the layout on the screens, which is always fun.
Yeah, technology's hard.
It is.
And
I said that all
we
weekend, I think.
we've
Technology's
been
hard.
messing. I've been messing with this where I can go whoop. Oh, look, it's just James.
Oh, front and
Whoop.
center.
That's right. Oop, and there's me. All right. Enough of that shenanigans. We were just talking off screen about I've got a scratch right on my face from El Gato. I thought at first it was really cool that I had a cat that plays fetch. It was, if you guys have ever done this, like some cats actually play fetch. You'll throw, she's got a jingle ball. You throw it, she plays with it. She plays kitty hockey with it. She'll bring it back, drop it at your feet, sit down and wait for the next one. I think she learned this from a dog. It's really cool until she did that one time at like 4:30 in the morning. She was playing with it and she dropped it on the bed in between my fiance and I picked it up, and without even thinking, I picked it up and I chucked it. And I was like, okay, she's gone. So I hear jingle, 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 boom, boom, down the stairs. Like 30 seconds later, I hear jingle, jingle, jingle coming up the stairs. Like I'm thinking to myself, oh crap, what did she do? She dropped it right on right on command. The beast herself. She drops it on the bed again. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna gently roll it off. Like just drop it next to the bed. She jumps off the bed, plays it, brings it back on the bed. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be bad. So now I have
You just gotta hold it, man. You can't do it. My dog was the same, not with the playing fetch, but she'll like 4 o'clock in the morning decide, hey, I want to go outside. And she used to do the rounds. She would go to wake the boys up because they would get up and they would let her out. And I told them, I was like, stop letting her out. I said, put her in a cage. Like she'll stop doing it. And she has stopped doing it. She won't ask anybody now. But she was all about, like, she'd go and she'd, go up and like start pawing at them and get them up, and they'd get up and they go and they let her out. And of course, I mean, that wasn't that big of a deal, but the worst part was the dog won't come back in like an hour. So like 5 o'clock, and my wife hates nothing more than to be awoken like an hour before she has to get up. Like,
that's the worst. That is the worst.
It's the worst.
Your sleep cycle is 90 minutes, right? So you got to, if you like, if it's less than 90 minutes and you can't fall asleep immediately, then you just might as well get up because you're going to be groggy.
Yeah. And I don't hear the dog. So I don't get up to go get it. She hears the dog. And so, it's, so I just started telling him, like, look, just stop. And it was funny. The first kid started doing it. So the dog started going to the second kid.
That's funny.
But now she knows, and she doesn't bother anybody at night. It only took a couple times to be like, nope, just put her in the cage. She'll be fine. And, now, I mean, we typically don't cage her. So
yeah,
it's, it worked out pretty well, but we were like, look, we just got to teach her. Don't wake us up in the middle, like for sleeping, don't bother us.
Yeah.
She could wait. She didn't need to go out. She just wanted to go out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Well, she's this one's going to be entertained for a while because front yard is a giant 100-year-old hickory tree, and right now it's just the whole yard is full of hickory nuts, and which means there's thousands of squirrels busily running about the yard.
Nice.
She's sitting there trying to figure out how to get out and go be friends with them, or maybe bring one back dead. I think the latter. Anyway, all right. So hey folks, thanks for listening. This is a maybe, I don't know how to describe this. Every once in a while I get on a little mental bubble. I'll just churn on something for a bit. This has been one of them. There's two types of conferences, James, right? There's the technical, the black hats, the DEF CONs, okay, maybe not the RSAs, but those types of trade show type things, B-sides, those things, right? And then there's like the CISO dinners, the various CISO conferences that you see popping up everywhere, all over the place. And those have really started to annoy me in a way that I can't adequately describe for a number of reasons, right? So I've never done, I don't need to name them, you know who you are. I've never done the one that says like, hey, we'd love you to be a speaker. You're like, oh, cool. What do you want to talk about? Oh, well, you can pick your own topic, but it's going to cost you like $25,000. You're like, wait, you want me to be a guest? Oh, I see what this is. You want me to come pitch you? So I've avoided those, but they're all getting to be that. And I don't know, man. I'm disappointed. I guess there's not really a way around this, right? There's to have decent content at an executive level, like actually produced with food and boardrooms and all that stuff at the Ritz Carlton or wherever that you always like to have these things. You got to put on a little pump, so you got to get a little cash, which means you got to invite some vendors, which means vendors are going to vendor. But there's no balance. There seems to be no balance to these things. You go to these things, dude?
I went to something like that like many years ago. I haven't been to one in a while, right? But so you're talking really more focused, like executive level,
yeah,
type of things.
Those are the ones, yeah.
Which are interesting because I kind of get the point, right? Because the goal of one of these, I would see, is not necessarily to be at that technical level. I mean, you see a lot of people now talking like CISOs aren't really a technical role. They're, more of a management leadership, out of the weeds a little bit. So, that idea of, hey, I need something where show me all the different options we have. This is that type of thing. It's that and networking, right? Like it's those two key things that you're trying to put together. So it's an interesting dynamic versus something like a DEF CON or a Black Hat, B-Sides, which is really more, to me, less for the executive level and more for the ICs and, people that are doing the work, and a lot of them probably said the same thing if you're seeing those high level or marketing things, right? Like I'm not going to, I've been to those type, right? You go to a conference that's not a Black Hat or DEF CON, but it's not a CISO type of thing, right? It's kind of that in between. It's still a pay to play type of thing, but it's billed as technical. Yeah, but it really is just marketing. It led you down this wrong path, and you're like, all right, I kind of wanted something technical here, and it's really just market, like very high level. This.
Yeah, I've done a couple of these where I've been to, so I've attended a couple, right? Because Atlanta has no shortage of these things. There's always a couple that end up coming through. You're like, oh, special guest speakers. You're like, oh man, that's a cool guest speaker. That's a cool keynote. That head of the FBI, something or other, industry, whatever, thought leader, blah blah blah. And they're not vendors. They're actually legitimately cool people to go talk to. And you're like, all right, cool. So you go the keynote. You're like, okay, well, this is a little more fluffy than I would have expected, but all right. And I'm by the way, I'm not saying I'm like the most technical person anymore, because God knows it's been a long enough since I've been in that thing. But it's certainly like you get one level deep, and it feels like we've just lost the ability to. All right, let me separate this out, because there's two failures here that I want to address. Maybe we'll even provide some solutions. I don't know. Who are we to know? Let's talk on the speaker side, because on the speaker side, like if you get invited to one of these things, and if you're giving a talk, and so those of you not listening are listening on the podcast and not watching the video, I am doing the air quotes talk, right? For those of you that are doing that, maybe, just maybe, don't bring your sales deck and use that, because you know who you are from the ZT Zero Trust, whatever the hell, endpoint, ZTE, ZTNA, whatever. Like there's a particular vendor that brings their CEO, and every single time that person just goes up there and just, here's the industry at large, here's the problems, here's why we're awesome, here's you should buy more of our stuff. It's like, oh my God, seriously? Like you couldn't even have been bothered to. And I get it. You paid for the privilege of coming and talking to a room full of decision makers ish. Maybe do something original, authentic, and that actually gives them some value. Because as a speaker, James, I feel compelled to like provide something, right? Like give them something they wouldn't know otherwise. Maybe some of my expertise, maybe some anecdote, maybe something that isn't a marketing deck.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, when you think about the presenting part, it's interesting to, you're invited, but it's going to cost you to come. Like this isn't the Super Bowl halftime show. But at the same point, again, yeah, it shouldn't be a marketing opportunity. I feel like you see stuff all the time about people how to sell, and it usually doesn't start with, here's how great my product is. It's really more around, hey, here's the problem we're solving. I think you might have this problem too. Here's how this stuff is coming together. Like build that story around what it is that you've seen that is outside of what anybody else has seen, and what makes this different, and how this is going to affect you. But yeah, you get in there, and so many times they just read that generic marketing slide deck, that they've never seen. I remember being at a conference, I mean, gosh, this has been 7 or 8 years ago. And the guy literally had to look over at every slide. And he seemed generally surprised with every slide, because every time he would look, he'd look at the slide. He'd be like, oh, and then he would talk to the slide. But it was like he'd never seen the slide deck before. And like he was surprised at every slide they gave. Oh, yes.
That's probably not a good thing. That is, you know what? That's probably not a good thing, right? Maybe. So I think that leads me to like point one, as a speaker, as an invited speaker that maybe you've paid your way to be there, provide content that's interesting, that doesn't blatantly market and sell your product. Like I expect that you'll talk about a problem that you're solving or addressing, because solving is a powerful word there. But I think, I think if I'm there and the topic is, I don't know, let's how to effectively manage enterprise users, right? I expect that the authentication related vendor will talk about a little bit somehow about what they do and why it's relevant. But I'm not going to expect you to give me, the Pokemon Institute facts and figures in 7 of your marketing slides, followed by literally, this is how our architecture works and why. Like, what? No, that's not right. That's not value. That's not a good use of somebody's time. I gotta say, like, I get it, you guys. I get it. Having done this long enough, you've got a busy job as security leaders. Like your day is full of crazy. You're dedicating a couple hours, or in some cases, like this past week for me, like they're dedicating a full day. All right, I want to be able to say, I did my best, and I gave them something, and I want them to walk away with the notion of, I learned something. Like, yes, there were vendors there, but I learned something. So that's number one. Number two, I feel like we haven't done anything that's authentic. Does that make sense? Like it's all just posturing, and it's all just, we're better than they are. There's not a lot of people can actually go through a proper presentation that isn't written by somebody who doesn't understand our industry or doesn't understand the audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's lacking in that term, right? But I mean, everybody's looking, I think, to sell their stuff, right? I'm not here to push anybody else's stuff or anything like that. And not that they would be doing that, but the fact that if I'm not focusing specifically on my stuff, maybe I feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? Like I got to push my stuff, and how do we push stuff, right? How do people pick? If I go to the CISO level, hey, I want to go pick a vendor for something. Usually what's their first stop? To go out and look at like a Gartner or, one of these institutes and say, okay, well, who's in the top quadrant of this thing? And then let's go look at facts and figures. Like this is what a lot of this level spends their time looking at, is the charts and these different things. Now, that doesn't mean that at an event like this, that's what I want to sit there and look at, because that's what I'm going to go look at when I go do this other stuff, right? Like that, my research is going to include that. If I'm going to sit here and listen to you talk, let's avoid that stuff and let's actually hear the story that you have. Cover that stuff I'm not going to get from these different institutes. But how much of that, like how much feedback do we ever get from these organizations? Like an event like this gets put on, they send out a survey, everybody checks fives for everything. They're like, yeah, it was good, it was a great time. Because nobody really wants to be honest about, whether they like it. Maybe you get a couple people that are like, wow, I really wish the content would have been this. But they're the small few out of the majority. And it's like, you know what? It's just easier to keep doing them just like this. So how much drives that change to say, hey, what if we did this differently? How do you measure that effectiveness? And who wants to put that time in to make that drastic of a change?
Yeah, but you said the magic word, research, right? I feel like you should at least know your audience a little bit, because if you're going to go and stand in front of a group, usually these types of events, they'll tell you, they'll give you a hint as to who your audience is, who's registered, who's coming. Maybe just quick glance through the LinkedIn profiles of these companies, right? Just to know who, like, who's coming, what the audience is going to be like, what the potential there is, and also maybe like read the, hopefully you're putting together your own talking points and speaking deck, but if you're not, at least read it beforehand once. So you're, again, like you just said, like, you're not surprised, like, oh, look at that, a cool slide.
Yeah.
Like, you should not be doing that. Like, that's obviously where you're the wrong person up there. And I think what's interesting, kind of to make the matters worse, is when you get somebody out in front of folks of like, oh, I'm the head of marketing for, I'm like, oh, why am I here? Because I know what's going to happen, right? And it's hard. I don't know why companies send marketing and salespeople to, quote, give talks. And it's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm just disappointed. But I tell you what, I'm going to flip this on you. I went to one last week, so I got invited. It was a pay-to-play event, so I'll preface it by that. And I have to say, I really wasn't expecting a tremendous amount. Like, I wasn't expecting a lot. The guest list felt a little too good to be true. I was up in Boston. It was pretty good. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you can figure out which event it was. I actually don't really fully remember the name of it. Sorry. But I got there, and the room was full. I had somebody from our executive account team look through the list and like, yeah, these are companies we'd like to do business with, which is kind of neat. And here's the thing, this format they used actually, I think, works, because they must have vetted the speakers, because there were like top, like stage topics, and then they'd break out and do like they called it a boardroom session, which is a closed door. You get a moderator. The vendor that sponsors that gets to pick the topic, but there's like an executive moderator that's a security lead from some company in the industry. And you get, if you pick an interesting topic, right, they're not going to force people into your boardroom. But there's like 4 of them, and a couple of them were less full than others.
Right.
But the topic we picked must have been good, because I'm pretty excited about the fact that we didn't have any chairs open, and it wasn't the typical like, show up, I'm going to talk about what we do, and then you're all going to just nod and it'll be over. The whole point of these was, and they told us ahead of time, the organizers told us ahead of time, like, you got to be interactive, otherwise your moderator is going to take over and like kind of overrun you. I was like, all right, that's fair. So we started with a premise, and we talked about, I wanted to talk about, I don't know if marketing loves me for this or not, but I've always been curious, and we've been talking about it on the podcast. Like, how do you do security uniformly in environments that are anything but, right? And so we had a pretty big room. We had energy sector, healthcare, media. Like, we had a pretty cool group. And so I posed the question, and it was interesting, because like from my right, my left, in front of me, like, people started talking to each other, and then they'd come back and like, and when it was, and I get, okay, it seems like we're getting down to everybody sort of talk the question. I pose a follow-up, right? I get to do that. And my moderator kind of, like, oh no, what you should really ask is, and then went over the top, and it actually was a crazy good 45 minutes. I've got like 4 pages of notes on stuff I could write about and don't do podcasts on. But I think more importantly for the company that sent me there, i.e. my employer, I got a bunch of people that were like, hey, I'm curious. You guys must solve some of these problems. You got a minute?
Right.
And brain explode. Like, all right, that was great. But it was because I want to think that it's because I tried really damn hard not to like market them. There was no mention of my company name except for in my intro. And I did ask a question towards the end. I was like, all right, I'm going to ask a self-serving question. This is related to our business. I want to know blah, blah, blah. And by then we were 30 minutes into a really solid conversation. So people were like, all right, I'll give you that one. Like you've waited the requisite 30 minutes. I feel like I'm getting value from my peers. All right, I'll answer this for you.
Right.
And that spent the next completely unexpectedly. The next 15 minutes were really about that. And it got us to a really good place. I want to say, if you're going to do that kind of an event, you've got the keynote, you've got the boardroom session, right? Closed room, vet those well. And then they did these things where the vendor they did like 3 vendors and like, I think 3 or 4 vendors that got to sponsor these 7-minute, like equivalent of lightning talks. They called it lightning talks. You had 7 minutes to talk about, and like, they would just cut you off if you went too far. You had 7 minutes to talk about your product or why your company was relevant. And you could immediately tell which ones the audience was like, marketing speech. I got to go take a call, or I'm going to go walk off and get a coffee. And the ones that were actually talking through problems, and then they did like the company hook, in the last 30 seconds or minute, those people stayed in for. I think I like that formula. I know I just talked for a long time, but I really like that formula.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely sounds a lot better than, your typical conference idea where you just go listen to people speak all day. Like if it's not interactive,
yes,
like especially when you, I think, get to that level, right? When you're talking about CISOs and, executive level attendees sitting there just listening to people talk. I mean, I don't go to conferences very often, much since I stopped speaking, right? Because I don't like to sit there and listen to presentations. Like it's 50 minutes of somebody talking, and the chances of being super relevant to what I'm looking for are pretty small. Like having those very specific, hey, let's get a small group, let's get people talking. The key to that, of course, is having people that will talk. And maybe you get that better at an executive level thing. So many times, how many times we try this internally in our organization? It's like, hey, let's all get together. We're going to have this conversation. And one person who has that idea talks about it. And then everybody else is just crickets, and you like trying to get people like, just say something, share something. So if you don't have that type of audience, you do risk like nobody getting anything because nobody wants to.
I think that's, James, I think that's a factor of 2 separate things. So the organizer, so you can open these events up to like anybody, right? The really good organizers have people in the field that they know that they can invite, because it doesn't take, like, not everybody has to be ready in that. Say there's 10 people, not everybody in that room has to be coming into it going, all right, I can't wait to get my my feelings known. But you need like 2 or 3 people that are interested enough to where they're opinionated enough to get people going. And then the second factor of that is you've got to have somebody in, and I want to give myself just a little bit of credit because I have been doing this for a very long time, longer than I think I'd like to admit. And so I've learned at least some of the ways to get people to engage, whether it's through humor, whether it's through person, like tell them a story of, something I've done, something that we've seen, something from the news, like get them talking. And once people open up, once they feel like, okay, you're genuine, you're here to, we're going to get something out of this. They go from like sitting there like this with their arms crossed, just staring at you. You can tell they kind of lean in, they stay, flip the notebook open, they'll take a note, they'll look around the room, they'll they'll engage, and it doesn't have to be you they're engaging with. They ideally you want crosstalk right across the room, from different parts of the room to their peers, because the value isn't like you're as the person in the room. My job was to ask the question that got people thinking, and then get them to talk to each other, because I really I wanted to know some things that were in top of mind. But I didn't want to like survey, like, okay, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Like, I don't want to do that. Then people are like, we're fine. Yeah, we're great on that. But once like your peer says, let me tell you what we've been struggling with. Like, this thing just doesn't ever work the way it's supposed to, blah, 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 blah. And then politics got in the way and everybody, started fighting. And then the person next to them goes, oh, dude, I've been there. Let me tell you, I think I had it worse. And the person across the room goes, that's weird that you guys did that, because our company doesn't have that kind of issue. But here's why, like, and all of a sudden I'm going, hold on, I can't write fast enough to, like, this is amazing notes. But I think that when it's bad, it's on, like, everybody's to blame. The attendees sometimes just suck,
right,
and they're just closed in and not going to talk to anybody. The guests, the speakers, right, the organizers. Sorry, not the organizers, the speakers that are there, the facilitators. If they're not any good, they don't have any personality, they don't have any, like, no experience doing this, it's going to suck, because the attendees are just going to be like, all right, somebody's just here to market to me, and I'm just going to keep my thoughts to myself, because clearly they're going to call me later and be like, hey, that thing you wanted, can I sell you one of my things? And then I think probably one of the more important pieces of this falls on the organizer, because you got to figure out a format. You got to figure out a way to work to get a room going. You got to figure out a way to you get to vet the topic, vet the speaker, right? Vet the attendees. And I don't know. I think if my topic would have sucked, it would have been boring. And I know for a fact that, like, when the topic got reviewed, because it was all going through the marketing group, like, we were a pretty solid, sharp marketing org, but they're like, yeah, wouldn't you want to be talking about NDR? I was like, yeah, that's not, like, nobody there is like, oh boy, tell me about this thing. Like, no,
right,
nobody's going to there for that. Like, what the problem everybody has is, like, they've got cloud, they've got, people working from home, they've got offices, they've got retail locations, they've got warehouses, they've got shop floors, like, they have a lot of everything, and they're all thinking, crap, how do I make all of this secure with as few tools as possible? Yeah, that's a topic. Do we relate to that? Absolutely. Is it exactly in our marketing slides? No, it isn't. But that's the magic. That's the whole point.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about too, when you focus on the speaker side of things, the people that are showing up, from good speakers to not so good speakers, from marketers to people that are actually doing the stuff.
yeah.
Right. Because you get into that situation. Hey, we're in this small kind of boardroom scenario. I think you have a large set of people that have a hard time separating. This is my opportunity to market my stuff. How do I switch gears from that to all about me, and not a selfish all about me, but right, I'm marketing. How about it's from
This
me
is what I do.
to the more passionate side of, hey, we've got problems, and I might have a solution to a small bit of that problem, but let's talk about the problem and what other people are doing, to be able to open yourself up, almost to that, like, self-criticism type of thing, right? Like constructive criticism. Yeah, somebody might say, this guy does it better, or, come up with something that we don't do, or something we haven't thought about.
But that's a risk. Yes. That's a risk
There's
you
that
have
risk
to take.
there of, oh, wow, I might actually show
Yes.
some of the weaknesses that I have. And that's not our goal, right? We have to paint ourselves in this 100% solution vision. And
Yes.
you're really kind of exposing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And saying, hey, look, putting it all on the table, we're going to talk about this stuff. And, maybe I'll shy away with a little bit of the stuff we don't solve, but having that open conversation. I'm just curious how difficult that is for a lot of people to be able to separate out that, hey, I want to talk about what I do and how I solve your problem, to, okay, we talked about that. Now we're going to talk about this topic, not from a me perspective, but just the topic perspective. And what do you all have? What have you been using? What are you seeing? What's solving your problem? And being able to take that back from a non-vendory standpoint, and you probably run a lot more difficult time doing that when you have head of marketing showing up in an event like that versus somebody that actually is doing that stuff within the organization. You know, like they have that passion, like they really understand the stuff, because that's a whole different thing. You know, marketing on the website and at trade shows and stuff like that is very different than trying to have those discussions in person, talking, you know, and breaking out of that shell a little bit to just be like, hey, I'm just, you know, I'm a technical person, you know, or, you know, I'm an IT person. Here's what we're going to talk about. It's not my product specific. It's not your product specific. It's, hey, what are you seeing out there? And, you know, how do we go about trying to solve this thing? And maybe I have a piece of that solution, and maybe I don't.
Yeah. So listen, I when I worked for at HP, I worked for a guy, and he currently, I'm gonna pitch him because this dude's awesome. So that's the, I don't know if you can see it. That's the podcast. It's called Digital Disrupted. It's a guy named Paul Muller. Paul, if you still listen to this show, you need to come on and be a guest, because I think you could teach people a thing or two. But Paul, and I'm going to say this with a bit of humility, I thought I was halfway decent at doing talks the day before I worked for Paul. Then he came out to Sector with me when I spoke there one day. I think it was Sector. It was something like that. And Paul was like head of global evangelism. Paul is a character. He is a personality. He's an Aussie. He's hilarious. He's engaging, and he's like, if you're in marketing, Paul's what you want to be. And he came out, and I gave this talk, and I had a pretty big room, and like I was feeling pretty good about myself. And he goes, I got to ask. He's like, what is the goal of your talk? I was like, what? He's like, well, do you want people to be, do you want people engaged in what you're saying or reading your slides? I was like, well, obviously hearing what I'm saying. He's like, then why do you have the equivalent of half a novel on your slide deck in your slides? It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, no, like people, it's like, no, it's like the human, like if you have a lot of stuff on your slides, people are going to stare and read your slides, and you're going to lose track of what you're saying. Or he's like, so, or they'll try to pay attention to you and not see the stuff you put on. So he goes, so what you've got to do is you got to get aside. And he's like, and if you want people to listen to you, your slides should have like, Takahashi is the name of the format. It's like 3 to 4 or 5 words tops, 1 or 2, like it's got to be something I can do. Look at it quickly and then go back to you as a speaker. So he beat me senseless, like in terms of just like kick my butt all over the place to improve my speaking quality. And he had this brilliant idea, this brilliant format of it was like a 3-parter, but really it was like, all right, you gotta set up the problem. Like you gotta set up the thing that you want people to think about. Then you've got to tell them about all the ways that it can be resolved, all the ways people have tried, things that have been tried, approaches that have been given, products that have been out there. And he goes, and then you got to tell them here, you know what, all that is not great, but I've got a better way. And you give them the overview of that way, and then you stop. And then and that's it. Talk over, you're done. Because you want the person to go, yep, I've got that problem. Yeah, I've tried that. That sucks too. Yep, totally agree. And then at the end, you want them to go, oh yeah, that might work. That's interesting. That might work. And then you're done. They're like, wait, what aren't you going to tell me how to do it? Like, I like that method. Don't you have a solution? So that was Paul's thing, was like, you always end on like this, like 99.8% of the way, because that's when you find out whether the people that came to hear you speak are actually interested in the topic that you discussed. Because if they're interested in the solution, right, the thing you're proposing,
right,
there's 2 paths they'll take. They'll either go, that's a great idea, I'm going to go try that. Or that's a great idea. That guy knows some stuff. I bet that guy's got a way to solve that. And either way, you've given them something that they can take with them. And obviously your marketing team would prefer, and sales team would prefer that it's the latter, right? I'm going to go talk to that guy. Because I went from conferences where, especially like not like technical ones, you're just presenting an idea, but like the executive ones where you go up for 30 or 45 minutes, it's very rarely 50. It was like that's the worst format, right? 30 minutes is probably tops. You go there for say 30 minutes, you finish your thing, people clap, and then they leave the room. You're like, did that resonate? Like, did anybody care that I was like, was this just a break for people? Does anybody paying attention? I don't know. And so I went from that. What's that?
Bueller.
So I went from that. I got a couple of good techniques for like engaging in humor and being relatable and all that. So I picked that up from Paul too. But and by the way, Paul was just like seemed to be the master of like making a situation, a topic uncomfortable enough to where you're sort of like starting to wriggle a little bit. Like, this is tough. I don't want to hear more about this. Like, I get it. It's painful. And then he like make you laugh and you go, oh, okay, wait. That made sense. And you'd remember things. There's a ton of psychology behind this, but I went from like that everybody, you're done, everybody leaves the room, to at least a couple of people would be like, all right, I'm going to wait till you come down, and come over off the stage. And can I ask you a question about that thing you were doing? Like,
right.
Did your company do that? And it works because you're now, it's the reverse. It's always more powerful in reverse when somebody comes to you asking versus you trying to go like, hey, you came to my talk. I'd like to send 75 follow-ups to everybody that came. Are you interested in the thing that I'm selling? Because they're all gonna be like, no, I came to hear you talk.
Right.
Like, I thought it was interesting. We all know you're going to get follow-up emails from marketing, but it's best when you go out and seek that. So I don't know.
These are going to be the emotional. This produces the emotional follow-ups, right? This is like the TV series you've watched for 18 seasons, and then they cancel it, and they have a really, really crappy ending where you're like this cliffhanger ending, and you're like, what just happened, right? Because then it fills the Reddit boards. Everybody's like, it was this, it was that, and like everybody's freaking out. I mean, I honestly think we should be able to sue TV studios if they were to do season-long stuff and then like leave us, and they're like, we're done, and we're not going to tell you anymore. Like, nope, that shouldn't be right. I invested a lot of time in this. I want the ending.
There was I think a Netflix show that my kids really got into. And they did one season and they foreshadowed some awesome things in this. It's about like witch hunters or something, like these three, Lockwood, I think it was called.
Right.
Netflix, if you're listening, bring back Lockwood. My kids loved it. And they set up the cliffhanger at the end of the first season. They gave you a little peek and everybody's waiting. They're like, just kidding. We canceled it. And people were like, go look at the message. People are pissed. I fully believe they're filming the second season. They're like, I'm going to make this. It's going to be awesome.
It generates that interest, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like that, you leave people with that emotional side of it, and whether it's a negative emotional side or a positive emotional side, people start talking about it, and it's like, oh, they told us this, but they didn't tell us what the answer was, and maybe it sparks people to say, hey, this happened, right? Maybe it falls into that one bucket, right? People going out and saying, oh, that was interesting. Maybe they're saying it's interesting in a negative way, but they didn't tell us what. And then it goes and creates Reddit threads and all these different things. And conversation starts happening around that topic, which in some cases is kind of the ultimate goal. Yes, we want to sell our product, but if our product is really solving a problem or helping lead to the solution of a problem, then any conversation around that to help build that up should be a positive thing. We're getting people to talk about this issue, right? Like that, maybe it wasn't a direct, but it'll be an indirect to our organization, hopefully at this point, because now it's getting people that weren't talking about our topic or thinking about it.
Yeah.
Now they're thinking about it. It helps spread that word.
So listen, I up on time, but I want to do a little kind of wrap up here. So on the speaker side, I can't give you this advice enough. Know your audience, vet your content, and for God's sakes, be engaging. Like, just try your best not to be reading marketing slides, because honestly, I'm telling you right now, nobody cares that you're there, and we're all laughing at you as we text each other while you're up there. And we try to avoid you. So there are a couple of you guys out there that do this. Stop. It's not helping anybody. But there are some really engaging speakers. Like, look, tech companies can, it's possible they can hire engaging marketing folks, and whatever, field CISOs, CTOs, whatever you call those roles, evangelists, whatever. They can come to events. They can be super engaging. They can absolutely give your company positive press. Not always, but they can. And I've seen it done, and it's fantastic. On the so there's that, right? On the organizer side, and because I really like this show and I thought it was good, I'm going to give you guys the name of it. The organization is called the Cybersecurity Collaboration Forum. It's a cyber risk alliance community. I encourage you guys to go look. Go if you're into the executive type of collaboration meetings. This isn't your typical show up. They're gonna throw 100 vendors at you and you'll go home going, great, more swag. Like, that's not the kind of thing this is. You're going to, if you're coming to these events, the expectation is you're bringing some knowledge and you're gonna like share, right? So I'll post a link to this show because they do this event all over the place. The one that was just in Boston's awesome. I thought it was fantastic from a vendor perspective, and I think based on the amount of interaction we got, I think it was great. And the organizers are fun people, so it's good. I'm going to give you guys a link to that in the show. But if you're the organizer of one of these events, think about a format that works, that boardroom format, that Chatham House rules. I think that's a great format. Lightning talks is a good idea for vendors if they want to go up there and pitch. Because even if it's boring, it's only like 7 to 10 minutes at most, and it doesn't wreck your conference's flow necessarily. And then the thing that I think really works is, rather than having like long rows of chairs and everybody staring at the stage the entire time, round tables, like literally round tables, and force people to sit next to each other and look at each other and maybe exchange notes and talk. Because that's what close quarters interaction does, even in this industry where you don't like talking to people. I think it works. So I think I'll end it on this. I started on a pessimistic note. I'll end it on this. There are ways of doing it right, and I happen to be invited to one. I hope to get invited to another one again. These things are cool, even if you pay to play, they can work. And for everybody that attends these from the buyer side, we do appreciate you tremendously showing up and giving us your time. And we, as this industry speakers and those that event, like there to pay to be there, we're going to hopefully keep working hard not to give you fluff and crap so that you actually get some value out of this.
Nice. I think it's a pretty fair wrap up.
That's a fair wrap up. I know it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Thanks, James. Thanks for the early morning convo here. It's bright and sunny now, but it was a little dark when we started here.
It's nice taking just topics like this and just be able to like talk it out, and
yeah,
because I know how you get, like, not you personally, but right, like how people get. I know how I get sometimes, right? Like I get ramped up on stuff. I see somebody post something on LinkedIn, and you're like, "What the heck are we doing right now?" And you get all ramped up, and then you sit there and talk about it, and it turns into really good conversations, And so, yeah, it's good just to be able to have the ability to get on and chit chat about different things. And sometimes the outlook changes from the beginning of the show to the end of the show.
Yeah,
it's good.
I don't know. If you guys have us in your ears right now or watching, I'm curious if you've caught any of the 13 I've been thinkings that I've been posting. I kind of caught this thought of doing it one short a week, just a quick thing that's on my brain. And I keep them under 60 seconds, so it doesn't take much of your time, but it's a video format on YouTube. So I've gotten, like, you guys are clearly listening to these, some very interesting comments. So hopefully you're enjoying those. I'll keep producing. I'll probably, this week's 30-second, 45-second rant might be on this topic, as I think about it more, but we appreciate you guys listening. Hey, it's been 45 minutes. Time to go. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed the new intro and the new exit. Those are recently recorded. My kids got involved, and I think it's kind of cute. So hopefully you like it. But James, thank you for riding shotgun on this beautiful Monday morning.
Yeah, you bet. It's been fun.
All right, folks, thanks for listening. This has been another episode of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Here comes the intro music, and we are gone.